Hey guys, what is up? I just woke up from a nap where like the last 20 minutes of my dream was me waking up. So at this point, I don't know if I'm really awake. Like I've done this several times in my dream. I'm hoping this is real. How are you guys? I hope that you are well, or as well as you possibly can be given the circumstances of existing. I have been away for a little bit, but this Venus and Scorpio energy, thank you for joining. Hi. This Venus and Scorpio energy, honey, she was not to be ignored. And I thought that I could ignore her. I thought that it wouldn't be that loud of a transit. And it's so loud that I was like, there's no way I can't go on and talk about this, especially because this transit comes right before Mercury in retrograde. So I kind of want to give us like a breakdown of our peace before that gets a little bit disrupted. Not that Mercury in retrograde is going to be necessarily bad. I don't think any full moon phase or transit or retrograde is necessarily good or bad. It's always exactly what we need, but it's going to be a little bit chaotic. And so I kind of wanted to like check in first and foremost. So we don't have a full moon or a new moon. We have a full moon coming up next week, I think on the 20th in Pisces. So I'll come around to talk about that when we're closer. But otherwise, I want to talk about Venus and Scorpio because it is, and the reason why I titled this live, or if you're watching this on YouTube, this video, why this is your new era is because, ooh, child, everything about this transit, and especially what Scorpio energy embodies, is this idea of being comfortable with death and rebirth in the literal sense, of course, but also like in the metaphysical sense, the figurative sense. And so coming to terms with the fact that a lot of your attachments, a lot of the ways that you've written your story, a lot of the ways that you've anchored your identity are going to be challenged right now, is important because it's going to introduce you to a new era. I love that I'm just like opening up with this immediately, but and this morning during our circle, I used this example of like, you know, when an artist is like about to drop a new album or like go into a new era of their career, like everything about them and their chosen aesthetic sort of changes, right? So like they'll change their hair, they'll change the way that they like dress or whatever it is that they're like sort of embodying energetically. It shifts to sort of like mark this new period of time. And I feel like if there's any astrological transit that is going to help us sort of embody that same moment of transformation, it's this one, honestly. And it's not just Venus and Scorpio, right? Because we're coming up on an eclipse season. We have the retrograde, which is really about like redefinition. Hi, thank you for joining. But I think the most beautiful part about, especially like experiencing pop culture, is seeing artists really mark chapters in their lives with end time periods with the way that they integrate change into their new eras. And this Venus and Scorpio is kind of like, how can you kill every single thing that you have poured so much identity into and rebuild it and cast it in you and make it different? And it's also going to challenge our relationship with conscious choice versus like subconscious attachment. So anytime Scorpio is going to show up, and particularly in the Venus sign, it's really going to highlight what choices and what's habitual about our lives that have kind of become a part of like an autopilot, and what is actually conscious choice. What are we doing just for the sake of doing, and what are we doing that is actually like an empowered choice? So there are shadow and light aspects to every sign, to every transit. And when it comes to Scorpio, it's really going to highlight the duality and the balance between just like a fluidity with our relationships versus like obsession and control. And this can come up in whatever area, you know, it's going to show up in your life, particularly whatever house rules Scorpio for you. So for me, for example, my 12th house is ruled by Scorpio. So like I'm really recognizing like my inner dialogue and my obsessive thoughts. And I'm having a lot of like intrusive thoughts. And it's important to know that with a transit like this, whatever is not being looked at is going to be really irritated. So like fears and anxieties and relative to whatever house is like owned by Scorpio is going to be really loud. And it's because it's asking to be looked at. It's asking to be integrated. This is a beautiful period for shadow integration. Love you. I think shadow integration is something that's talked about a lot, but not necessarily really broken down in terms of like, what exactly does it mean to integrate our shadow? And I think an important element of it is not to demonize the parts of us that we are uncomfortable with or to figure out a way to heal it away, but rather a way to look at it, to sit with it, to hold its hand, and to build a healthy relationship with integrating it into who we are in our waking lives without it being loud or distracting or steering the wheel, right? But for example, and I brought this example up earlier in today's class, this idea that like maybe, you know, sitting down and sort of identifying what your biggest fear is. And for example, it could be fear of abandonment, right? And really dissecting that down to like, what is the root cause of that fear, of that shadow aspect of that wound? And when you really get to, you know, its core, a specific circumstance, a thing that happened, typically it's during childhood. So wherever that was born for you, not only looking at it and acknowledging its source, but also finding it as fuel to rewrite the narrative that it came from, right? Recognizing that whoever imposed that wound on you was operating from a hurt space, or rewriting how you responded through responding differently to it now, but also like utilizing it as fuel to make sure that you have really conscious and present relationships, right? And to be your own home so that abandonment doesn't affect you anymore, right? And that's a very loose example, but it's one way that you can sort of like navigate shadow integration, is looking at like, from what source do my fears scream from? And how can I look at it and tilt my head a little bit to shift perspective? So shadow integration is large. Redefining your era right now. And the reason why I brought that up so abruptly is because I think it's so important to recognize the fact that like a Venus in Scorpio is really going to ask of you change. It's going to ask of you to shake off what is comfortable, what is innate, what is autopilot, what you're attached to in terms of like patterns or habits or relationships. But it's going to do so in a way where you can finally let it go and evolve into a new state of being. And so if there's any attachment that you built to a story that you've told yourself, or a relationship that just, you know, you don't want to let go of, how can you rewrite that story? How can you look at why you are so attached to it? So once again, I want to offer another example that is personal. I was journaling on this morning. I journaled on the prompt that I just shared on the page, which is, what part of me can I feel dying, and is there an attachment I have to letting it go? And what came up was this idea that like for the past year, honestly, inner child healing has been at the forefront of my personal work. And I had such a good time doing it that I feel like I really built such a large identity surrounding my inner child. And while she will always be a part of me, I will always be a childlike, curious little creature. I realized that like that is also stemming from attachment to not wanting to let my childhood go, and life is really asking of me to honor who I am in my adulthood, and to, yes, hold my inner child's hand, but to also embody who I am in this new era. And I'm having a really tough time letting go of the safety of my childhood, the comfort of my childhood, because when I dissect that further, it means safety. It means the forfeit of responsibility. It means knowing that like life is kind of taken care of for me, and I can be in my mom's arms and kind of like not have to worry. And so forfeiting that is sort of surrendering to the unknown and to responsibility, and it's difficult. And so I recognize that I've been holding on to that for that reason, but simply acknowledging it, finding a healthy balance, right? Knowing that like I'll always bring my inner child along for the ride, but that I really am moving into a new period of self is important because that's how the chapter is going to unveil. So knowing that like I see a lot of like earth tones, I see a lot of gold and malachite, I see a lot of newness for me, is exciting, but it also means forfeiting what I am not allowing myself to let go of in terms of identity. So that is my example, but I'm sure that if you spend some time reflecting on it, you'll figure out what that example looks like for you and how to navigate acknowledging it, finding its source, but also bidding it farewell, because we need to get comfortable with life being seasonal, with death being an opportunity for rebirth. And that's why I included the spider. I don't know if like spiders have been showing up for you guys. They've been a really loud totem for me, but they've embodied this entire lesson, which is how can you let go of what you built an attachment to? And ultimately, how can you let go of a story that you've been telling yourself and tell yourself a new story and find healing and empowerment through that? Also, it's worth noting that this is a great opportunity for heart healing. Scorpio is all about healing the heart. It's all about figuring out like, what does my mind need? Okay, cool. What does my ego need? What does, whatever else mean? But like, what does my heart need? Really tapping into that and figuring out if that's more rest, and if also that is more boundaries. And the reason why I bring that up, thank you for joining, my love, is because Venus in Scorpio, this transit is really, really, really going to ask of us to redefine our accessibility. And that is going to look different for everyone. I realized for me, once again, being a Leo moon and talking about myself, that means how much I'm showing up online, but it also means like how much I'm pouring into my friendships. Which ones need me to reel back a bit more, which ones need me to show up a bit more, but realizing that like your energy is going to be really, really, really susceptible to exhaustion right now. So honoring that and recognizing like, where do I need to be a little bit less accessible and available? Where do I need louder and sterner boundaries? And also like, and what avenues do I actually want to pour this energy that I do have into a bit more? What relationships do I want to nourish a bit more? What projects? Just like really looking at the way you are sort of like allocating your energy and reeling a large percent of it back in. Even if you don't think you need to, even if you don't think you're experiencing any form of like exhaustion or burnout, you are. You just are. So like reflecting on that and recognizing how you can be empowered by reeling it back in. So yeah, this is a new era, attachment to story, letting irritation be a sign for healing. You're definitely, I mean, I don't want to speak for us, so let me know, but a lot of us have been feeling our emotions being irritated, anxieties, fears, repetitive, intrusive thoughts, or maybe this is just my 12th house getting irritated, but I've seen it in other people as well. So really looking at what is your body telling you. And I want to highlight something that's fun about this Venus and Scorpio energy. I think we all define Scorpio as an opportunity to like, you know, dance with rebirth and dance with death and, you know, enter this like new era for ourselves. But it's also a great opportunity to redefine eroticism, how you embody eroticism and how you relate to your own sexuality. So if you found yourself holding back, or if you found yourself expressing your sexuality for a sake of approval, or to sort of like honor a part of your identity that maybe is even dying off, maybe that's part of what's dying off for you, really redefining that, but standing in it in a way that is most authentic to you. And I feel like that's mainly it. So in summation, redefine how accessible you are, redefine your boundaries, and making sure that your energy and who you are giving it to and what you are giving it to is responsible to you, because we are getting really exhausted very easily right now. Letting this new time period be the integration of your new era. Figure out, and like when I say new era, of course it means new ways that you are spreading and allocating your energy, new forms of expression, but also like, how are you wearing your hair? How are you dressing? What are you doing differently with how you're physically embodying? The same way that an artist would usher in a new like album era, how are you going to step into this new era of self? Yes, queen. For me, honestly, it's looked like wearing a lot more black, because I feel like this last era of my life, I was really bright and loud, and now I'm feeling more like in a hermit mode, and I really want to embody like deeper tones and feel less accessible. Honestly, my new era is being a little bit more elusive. So redefining a new era, letting irritation and letting the emotions that are coming up as a sign of healing, finding out in what ways can you integrate your shadow. I feel weird seeing you in black. I'm never in it, darling, but let me start. Also, black is also color healing. It's a form of protection. I feel like every time I'm wearing black, I'm embodying tourmaline. So, yeah. Anyway, though, letting your shadow be integrated, redefining your relationship with eroticism and sexuality. Go deep. Let this really be a good opportunity for heart healing. Quiet everything else in the body and ask, like, what does my heart need? Be really honest and direct with yourself. And figuring out what's habitual and what is conscious choice. Recognizing the way in which you relate to control or obsession in an unhealthy way versus a healthy way. Always, yes, always. Anytime I'm like walking into a space where I feel like my energy may be zapped, I'm like, let me go ahead and wear some black, honey. So yes. Be conscious with every choice. I love that. Thank you, guys. So that's basically it. If you joined later in, I would totally advise you to go watch the beginning, because I think this is a really cool opportunity to usher in, like I said, like a new era for yourself. And I'm all about the rebirth. I'm all about, things being seasonal, darling. So I will check back in for next week's Mercury in retrograde. And the full moon that's coming up. But otherwise, I hope that you are all well, doing as well as you possibly can be. Feel free to subscribe, follow, book a one-on-one, whatever you want, darling. And I love you, and I'm sending you all of good vibes. Bye!